Hi, so my name is Gracie, and today I'm going to be giving you my last speech, which is about interpreting in theater, which will coincide with my last speech that I was given to the class, but I'm not performing in front of a class today, just Nolan. So the first place I did research on was called the Smith Center. So the first lady that I researched, her name was Whitney Hobbs, and she has done multiple different Broadway shows. And typically it's with two interpreters, because that's a lot of work, so each person will get assigned a certain amount of characters. And the one that I found most awesome was Hamilton. I'm not the biggest fan of Hamilton, but it was still pretty cool to look at. And so they got their music a month in advance so they could start memorizing and practicing, and they got the playlist of 46 different songs they had to memorize, which is a lot. So next I'm going to talk about walking on the fine line. So that pretty much means that you can't overshadow the actors on the stage, because if you're interpreting on the side, which is typically on like a side stage, you do not want to look too dramatic. Like, yes, you want to show their emotions, but you also need to figure out the fine line of showing just enough but not overshadowing the actors. And then it's really important that you preview the show before you interpret it, because if you watch the people who are acting and that you see like a facial expression, or they laugh, or they make like a side joke, and you won't notice that while you're interpreting, it's good that you can add it in so the deaf people can get the full access to the theater show. And then next, I did some research on the National Theater of the Deaf, which is NTD, and this is their logo. I pulled it off of their website. So that's really cool. You can take a second to read real quick. Okay, so this was the first professional deaf theater company, which was established in the year of 1965 in Hartford, Connecticut, which is where many of the prominent deaf schools are. So the majority of the deaf performers have trained there, and these deaf performers, who are alumni now, go off into different parts of the country, and they start their own organizations and companies in regards to theater. So that's really cool. And then there's a bunch of different styles that are incorporated into the theater program. So there's just spoken language, which is just voicing, and then regular ASL, there's mime sign, there is invented theatrical sign language, music, and different kind of movements. So I think that's really cool. And now discussing the early years. So for the National Theater of the Deaf, on the stage, typically it's usually the deaf person who is just signing on stage, and they're going to be accompanied by a hearing shadow. So it's basically like your deaf person will be here, and your hearing shadow would just be to the side following them and voicing. And this can also be switched around, which I will talk about later in my presentation. But it's typical for the hearing to stand in the periphery to voice their lines, but you can also shadow. Most commonly they use shadowing, but it's not typical for them to stand off to the side. And so during the early years, the company had to invent a different kind of theater vocab, but they had to do this because during the early years, when this first was established, deaf people would go and watch, and they would not understand the signs that were being used or the language and the vocab, and so they had a problem with that. So they went to the people who owned the NTD, and they asked them, so to help with their concerns, they made new plays specifically just for the deaf to help. So I think that's actually really cool. And then their repertoire, it includes Western plays, children's plays, different kinds of poetry, letters, books, fables, all that jazz. And then they typically do a collaboration with Gallaudet, so the students from Gallaudet will go to the NTD to perform plays. So next, I'm going to show you a video of what shadow interpreting could look like. It's really cool. Sorry.
The harmonies of a chorus and the power of a showstopper. Just some of the things that make theater great. But imagine not hearing any of it.
That's just a short little tidbit I wanted to show you guys. Thought that was very cool. All right, so next. This is another place that I did a bunch of research on. It's called Hands On. This is their actual logo, one of their shows from Beauty and the Beast. So they're New York City based, and they're involved with different theater companies around. So it's not just one place, it's a bunch of different places that allow sign language interpreters to interpret for performances. And it's mostly shadowing, but as you can see, she just wears all black clothing, but some places are different. They'll actually dress like Belle or the Beast, but just in slightly muted colors, so they stand out just a little bit. And then they offer free or discounted prices for people who do not have the economic resources to attend for interpreting performances, so that's really sweet. And then they have collaborations with TOLA. TOLA is theater offers a lifetime of adventure, so it's offered for different kids. I think that's cool, and it's developed to expand theater experience and to make connections with the deaf and hard of hearing people. So yes, next one. This is from an anonymous interpreter from Hands On. I cannot find who she was or who he was, but I really liked this quote. I played that character so the deaf audience could really take in everything with their eyes, she said, since their focus isn't much on what is happening on the stage, but what's happening with the interpreter. I think this is really awesome because all deaf and hard of hearing people and hearing people can get the full theater experience of watching the ASL interpreters perform. So, and here are some different pictures of shows they've done. I'm not really sure. This one looks like Dr. Seuss, but I couldn't find which one that one was. So next, I also researched the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, which is in Rochester, New York City, which is combined with RIT, which is the college, Rochester Institute of Technology. So it's a combination. And they have collaborations with the NTD, which I just explained, the National Theater of the Deaf. And it's accessible to all deaf and hard of hearing people, and it helps to create a diverse community to be able to attend and watch the plays. Here's an example of one. See, as you can see, I will show you a short clip of what this will look like. It's actually really cool. And they have different minors offered there, but in order to get your minor, you will have to have your bachelor's. So they offer it in immersion in theater design and stagecraft, immersion in dance, and ASL performance. And all of the costumes are accurate to the time period in which the play takes place. So that's really cool. Here is the link I'll show you real quick. It's just from the actual website. If it will load, I'm sorry. Those are deaf people performing, so I think it's really cool. Here's the Wizard of Oz. Okay, so continuing on. We have my teacher's experience. She's not my teacher, but she's one of the on-staff interpreters here at Bethel, and she did a play at the 574 Theater, which is by here, and she did Into the Woods. And so for this play, it was a little different. Deaf people were given all of the main roles, and then the hearing people were shadows. So like I said, the deaf people would be like the actual people on the stage, and they would wear the real costumes, and the shadows would be off to their side-ish. And then Mondesi signed for all the extra characters, which was a little different because like no other hearing people have main roles. But one of the deaf people in the community, his name was Walter, he was a deaf lead, but he kept forgetting all of his lines. So Mondesi had to step in and take his role. But everybody wore the same costumes except for the shadowers. They wore green speckled shirts with black tights. And this was to look like the people of the forest. So when the people of the forest came out and saw the deaf people, they were so entranced by what they were doing and what they were signing. So they stayed and they interpreted for them. And then Mondesi did about 3 or 4 shows, and she really liked it. So, and then I'm gonna show this for my interpreting class, not for my speech though, but Here's my references, and then here are my APA citations. Thank you, and I'm very passionate about this, so thank you for listening.